This is Hunt Nebraska, the official podcast for insight into Nebraska's hunting and shooting sports community. Be sure to give us a follow on Facebook, our space for sharing stories, information, tips, and techniques. Now, Hunt Nebraska. Well, happy holidays and welcome in to the Hunt Nebraska cabin, wherever you might have taken us to give us a listen. We appreciate being there and being part of your December. Guys, we are down to the last few weeks, days of the 2023 calendar year. So far, I better introduce that gentleman right there, deep in thought. That's Jeff Rawlinson, Game and Parks. We've got our good buddy from the National Wild Turkey Federation on mission control over here, pushing the buttons, making us look good, Michael Addison. And one more time for your listening or viewing pleasure, if you're watching us on YouTube, we've got Hunter Nikolai right over here. Big things happening in the Nikolai world.
Yep, lots of moving parts and pieces. So.
I guess so. Selling a house, buying a new place. All that type of stuff. You got an estate you're looking at?
Not yet. We've got a place to stay temporarily, but it'll be interesting.
Now, can we let our listeners know? Can we talk about this?
He's leaving the Hunt Nebraska team.
Might be the last podcast. Maybe one more.
Maybe one more. We'll see.
We need like a sad violin sound effect.
We're going to have a going away podcast. Is that what that would be?
We do. Last year, we recorded a podcast for the fun of it. It was, I believe, Hunter, Jeff, Julia, and myself that we did not release last year because by the time it got edited and all that type of stuff, it didn't make sense. I think it was kind of one of those holiday joke sessions. And so that's going to get released here shortly. So it won't be the last time our listeners hear you or see you, but
won't know the difference.
We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. Now, this is kind of shocking news. Yep. Our good buddy Hunter here is headed to help do some more hunter ed and outdoor skills type programs a little bit further east of here. Not as far south or north as I thought, but straight east. And it took most of us by surprise. Wouldn't you say?
Turns out when you look at a map, things change.
Yeah. Facts kind of do that from time to time.
It did take us by surprise. We thought it was farther north, and it is east.
But I mean, not that. It kind of took us by surprise that he was not going to be here forever. We figured you're going to be here forever. Yeah. But I did find out that there were some signs. We just didn't always pick up on them. And so here, because this might be the last broadcast, we are going to wear the hunter education hats that you made.
Only appropriate.
I didn't get the plaid memo.
What's that?
I didn't get the plaid memo. I can see that.
It's winter time. So here's we'll just take a hat and here you go.
Take a hat.
We'll wear this. Now there were some signs. We just missed them, Jeff. We just missed them. Somehow we missed these signs right here. You thought they were all the same, but not quite.
Suppose time to put on the new hat, huh?
How long did it take you to draw the state of Illinois on that hat?
Illinois DNR hunter education. You know, I saw him wearing it. It isn't like it. It isn't like I didn't see it, but I didn't want to admit it. I just no, that's happenstance.
Yeah.
That's happenstance.
You know, hunter ed instructors and coordinators especially get together and sometimes they swap patches, hats, pocket knives, challenge coins, all sorts of different things. But this one might have told us a little bit more than what we realized.
We should have been paying better attention.
I just thought he liked the state of Illinois. I didn't think it was coming to this.
Well, he's a huge Bears fan.
Yeah, everything about Illinois.
The Bears. The Bears.
Every day when Hunter walks in, you just hear, "Duh, Bears."
But what's funny is you lost your accent when you came to Nebraska. Now you got to go gain it back again.
I know people, my family I say pop now because of you guys.
You don't say soda, huh?
No more soda.
They're going to be like, oh, that Westerner. Such a
we'll
Westerner. No, gee whiz.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're going to have them ship runzas to you. No. But that's not where we're going to discuss. We got a couple of neat articles that have come across the good luck in your position, by the way. Got a couple of neat articles that we want to talk about that have kind of popped up within the last week or so, and it really unique perspectives. We'll put it that way. Unique challenges for the hunter and for those that manage us out there, our wildlife biologists and agencies, both state and federal. We're going to start in Wisconsin, though, just for you, Hunter. Wisconsin's new age of deer hunting brings little joy. And this was published by Patrick Durkin of Patrick Durkin Outdoors. It says a little over 5 days ago. Wonderful little read, folks. If you haven't taken a peek at it, please do. But it kind of goes on. Here's kind of the numbers. So they just, completed a good chunk. Are there any deer seasons open right now in Wisconsin? I assume there's some.
Yeah, they've got a muzzleloader season, late antlerless seasons, and holiday hunts as well. So I think this is referencing the gun deer season.
This is November's 9-day gun season, which is very similar to ours is in length. It's just offset a little, if I remember right. Where $85,773 and 89,123 antlerless deer were harvested. And so it goes through and calculates that out, 174,000 plus deer during those 9 days. Hunters shot just over, half a deer a second, 0.54 deer per second,
yeah.
which right there, when you say that, just like, wow.
Yeah, it kind of
that's pretty good. So all I gotta do is wait the next second. It might be my turn.
And they're not happy.
And they're not happy, and that's kind of what it comes down to. They peaked during the 2009-day firearm season, which was where they were at 1.36 deer per second. That's still a lot of deer. Oh my goodness!
Well, we've learned as hunters, we've learned to be demanding, right? We have had. I mean, let's think about it. Our North American model is a model of excellence. It is a model of absolute excellence, and so we've kind of learned to not accept anything but excellence as hunters. We've kind of lived through the good old days. We have some good old days still coming, but we've lived through some of our best days as well in terms of compared to the past. I still think some of the best days are yet to come. But let's be honest with you. We started deer hunting in Nebraska. You look in the 60s, we were harvesting like 1,400 deer. Today we're harvesting a great deal more than that, right? So you start to go, okay, now we're at that, 60,000 to 80,000 mark. Look at Wisconsin. They've certainly seen a rise over the years. What was their best years?
That was it. I think
09,
it was.
Yeah.
Yep.
09. And how many deer we're talking?
I think they got the numbers all the way down, don't they? I'm still caught up on the half deer per deer per 2 seconds.
It was a crazy amount. Crazy number.
How many half deer I see running around the woods?
Possibly not sustainable.
2009, they a total of 201. Well, that's not it. They've got higher numbers than that.
Look at that.
We'll have to take a peek. But they've harvested from 2005. They've harvested anywhere from looks like 350,000 deer all the way to this year was 173,000 total harvest. To this point, like you said, there's still some things going on. That's a lot of deer.
It's a lot of deer.
But what it goes on to talk about, it's got how the hunters rated their appreciation of the season and whether they rated it, the quality of the hunting is high or low or that type of stuff. And even during the high years, not many people said, man, that was just amazing. That was just awesome. I can't wait. There was always something that kind of held them back from that. And the article kind of goes on and talks about, as hunters, do we set demands or expectations a little bit too high?
Well, let's be honest. If we're a product of our environment, and today our environment is social media and TV, doesn't that set the bar pretty darn high?
That's a good question. That's an excellent question because, 20, 30 years ago, it was within your small world, right?
Yeah.
These people I know, those folks that deer hunt, my friends, my family that I hunt with, that was kind of what you compared notes to, the coffee shop. Now you're right. I can go on to any Facebook group and see people, completely different situation than mine. Maybe not even in the same state as I'm in. Mm-hmm. And the bar kind of changes. You're right. That's an excellent point.
So I think there's some of that. I think we communicate more so people are aware more of other people's opportunities, maybe not the same opportunities you have. So we see some of that as well. But also, let's be honest, look, Hunter, your stage in life, right? You only saw the best of the years so far that Wisconsin's had. You didn't know of the years that were a little trying, a little more tough for hunters, that they'd come out and 10 of them would go to the field for a weekend and maybe 2 would come back with the deer. Those aren't years that you've seen. the years you saw were the best. And so your bar that you're judging by is quite a bit different than, say, mine.
Yep.
Because, Nebraska is the same way. We had years leading up to these great years that we've had over the last, 10, 20 years, but it wasn't always like that. And so, I can remember back in Nebraska 2 years where you put in for a permit back in March or whatever, and then June or July, you'd get a letter in the mail from your Nebraska Game and Parks Commission. And with trembling hands, you open that envelope because you were not sure. Did it say you were denied a permit this year? Did it say you buck only, or did you get that coveted either sex tag?
There was definitely almost a feel of I won even before a season started when you did just that, wasn't there?
Oh, my
all right,
gosh.
I got what
First
I wanted.
off, you got
goodness.
drawn. First of all, you got a tag, and you're like, oh, yes, I'm deer hunting this year. So that felt pretty darn good. But then it was like, oh, buck only, shoot. That's going to be tough to find one of those. Yeah, and they were all, for the most part, I hardly know anybody. For most of my adolescent deer hunting, I hardly know anybody who shot anything over 2.5 years old. Usually it was a 1.5-year-old buck. Today, that's just flip. Now, usually we're harvesting 2.5-year-old deer, and we know people who shoot 3.5, 4.5-year-old deer, and that's not crazy. I mean, that happens quite often. So, and are we not satisfied?
Well, growing up in Wisconsin and doing, the majority of my hunting has been white-tailed deer hunting in Wisconsin. And as far and as much as I remember, I think it's always, tags have always been over the counter. And here in the past, at least 6 years where I hunt, and it differs. They manage their antler list on the county level in Wisconsin. So you buy your statewide buck tag, and you get a number of antler list tags depending on the population, whatever the biologist set that at for the year. And ours has typically been, where we hunt in the county where we hunt, it's been 5 antler list tags with my buck tag. So, and my dad and my uncle's been going to the same spot where we go for, I think this year was his 50th opening day, going to the same location, and he says he thinks that this year was the best year that there's ever been up there. So
wow, well, that's pretty good
so
praise.
I think they're obviously, just like Nebraska, it's going to vary depending on habitat and what's out on the landscape. But even within some of that, there's northern Wisconsin, maybe the habitat's not there. They've had harsh winters, kill wolves, bears, all the other factors that go into whether a deer lives or dies impact that. But my expectations have always been pretty high, but they've also always pretty much been met because of where I hunt. But I can certainly see how it's changed over the last 20, 15, 10, 5 years based on, things like wolves, bears, chronic wasting disease, changes to habitat loss. That expectation has changed. Social media. If I'm texting a buddy in northern Wisconsin where I'm hunting, I'm sending him pictures of deer. He's not seeing deer. Is he going to be happy? Communication, I think, has changed too. So there's a lot of different factors. But for me, I don't share that same sentiment. But again, I don't have the same experiences as all those people. So.
We've talked about it in here. Is sometimes it doesn't matter how many deer you see if the right one walks out in front of you. It only takes, when you're big game hunting, it only takes that one.
Every season.
Nobody
that deer.
that's ever been an elk hunter ever complains that a 6x6 just walked out in front of them. It might be the only elk they see in 2 weeks, but if it's the right one, boom. Yeah. Same with deer. Whereas if we do hear complaints, and Jeff, you remember this here in Nebraska, where I'd see 100 does before I saw an antlered deer, and it wasn't big enough, and that was a complaint. So there definitely is that fun kind of twist of big game hunting. Is sometimes it doesn't take a lot of deer, it just takes the right one, and if you're not there at that point, you don't see it. But has our hunting changed as well? Just a little bit. I know the article kind of mentions that where we sit, our blinds, our boxes, our stands, whatever it might be, have gotten a whole bunch more comfortable in the last 5-10 years. Yeah. Heated, you can get more comfortable chairs instead of the 5-gallon bucket. You're not sitting by this tree today and that one tomorrow, or that type of stuff.
Makes it hard to want to leave your spot and actually go deeper into the woods or wherever you're going.
Because it's more comfortable. And if you spent several $1,000s on it, I mean, why would I go sit by that stump that's free? I've got to make this worthwhile. So I do think there's sometimes that happens. And when you get more sedentary, especially in a state like Nebraska, I'm not sure about Wisconsin. I'm sure it's parts of it. But, crop rotation, Jeff, can change movement of deer. Our drought that we've gotten, had here on the eastern side of the state can change the habitat where they bed. It's not as thick now. The grass didn't grow up. Or the vice versa out west where they got all the snow and rain this last year. They got oodles of spots to hide now. Yeah. So it's kind of, we're still watching the same area, hoping for the same results. And when that doesn't happen.
Yeah, I would venture to guess that a lot of our hunters, at least a good portion of hunters, would not hunt today if they had only the comforts and equipment that they had 50 years ago. Yep. I suspect there's a lot that just wouldn't, because it is I would say it's easier from a standpoint. The equipment-wise has never been better. Creature comforts have never been more available. People hunt out of chairs in their ground blind. The chairs cost more than my entire hunts did back in the 80s and early 90s, right? That's just a chair.
Are you done with that bucket?
So, yeah. I mean, I remember sitting on a 5-gallon bucket, right? You did too. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so, I think that has had an impact. I think it's interesting that, if we have a great year, that's one thing, but if we don't have a great year as hunters, we sometimes refuse to recognize all the things that were working against us that year. It's like all the information that we know about, we throw out the window. If it's a bad year, maybe it's Game and Parks' problem or something else, but there's a severe drought. They won't take that into account, and also, gee whiz, the temperatures were in the 90s throughout the deer season. Well, we don't worry about that. It was a bad year from my standpoint. Yeah, and I'm sure there is somebody that went out and shot a 7x7 bull elk, and people congratulated him. He said, "Well, I don't know. It's the only one I saw." I bet you there is people like that are out there. But you're right.
I haven't met them.
You're right that it just takes that one animal. So, but yes, I think that as hunters, I go back to what I said earlier. We've had such excellence in our management and our conservation model for so long that we're just used to that. We're not settling for a B+. No, we just aren't happy with the B+. We have to be in the A category, and that's just not possible in nature every year.
No, and being a football state, there's some similarities there. Once you achieve this, you don't really want to settle for standard much below. And we hunters oftentimes use that high water mark as how to measure everything else, because we've all heard it. And Jeff, you and I are approaching, not there yet, but approaching that point where we get to talk about the good old days and reminisce and tell all the young hunters how great it was back then. And we had to work for it, but my goodness, that was so much better than it is now. But that's what we remember. We remember those with obvious reasons. You don't think of all the hours you sat there waiting. You think of the successes, and they get closer and closer together in your memory. And you start making almost a narrative that's almost impossible to live up to. You mentioned waiting in the mail for that tag, deer tag.
Brutal.
I can remember several times. My dad wasn't a big deer hunter until my brother and I got him kind of back into it, kicking and screaming. But I remember going and looking at people that actually shot a buck during the gun season in the state I grew up, and we did that. Now there's folks that, like you said, Jeff, get mad because they didn't shoot one this year. Some of these guys went 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Some of them didn't. They missed a year or two because they didn't draw a tag, and then they get to go out and do it. And that's a state that allows party hunting, but they wouldn't see a buck during those hunts. And now it's kind of, I didn't see the one I wanted to shoot, so therefore there's got to be something at fault.
Yep. And again, you'll just like the Wisconsin discussions, you'll poll people, survey, were you happy? Wasn't happy. Didn't see enough deer. Blah, blah. And, the other thing I think is, sometimes working against us is, 40, 50 years ago, we might have put a little more time and effort into it. Today I think people go out and, again, social media, TV, if I don't see the trophy on the first day, that, man, I think they expect me to hunt both days this weekend. I mean, that's a lot of hunting. I hunted 2 days, all 2 days. Yeah, I hunted all 2 days. Well, you poor son of a gun. So I think that there's that expectation that, if I go out and sit in a deer stand for more than a couple hours, there ought to be something big walk by, right? I mean, isn't that how it's supposed to work? Yeah, and whereas, 40, 50 years ago, certainly, 30, 40 years ago, we didn't have that expectation. We knew you were going to put some time and energy into it and spend 3, 4, 5 days out in the field. So,
and I think Pat went on to mention that he talked about bear hunting in Wisconsin, how they don't see the same thing. Where, their bear hunters are generally satisfied. Even, I went on a bear hunt. I wasn't successful this year, and it was, one of the worst bear hunts in like 15, 20 years in Wisconsin.
But what was your expectation? Did you expect to see 3 or 4 bears a day?
No, absolutely not. And I think, part of that was, I waited 12 years to go bear hunting, so I, had that expectation that, man, this is probably going to be difficult. It's going to be a difficult hunt, different hunt. It's not as easy. It's not like you say, go and sit in a stand or go and set up a blind and sit in a bucket for a couple hours and something.
And I think there's something to be said about that, right?
I think the expectation has been set. You can get a deer tag over the counter. There's deer out there. Go shoot a deer in a couple hours. But I think hunter effort has a big part into it as well. And trail cameras and being able to see what's out on the landscape even before you're getting out there. And, I think that has an impact on it, whether you're seeing deer on your cameras or not, and helping set your expectation. There's a lot of different things that go into it, but I think hunter effort's probably a big piece of that from my perspective too. So
folks got into hunting because it's easy. They hunt something completely different or somewhere completely different than I do or have. It's part of the fun. It's the challenge.
Yeah, it is. And, there could be, you could have that perspective that, maybe there's a lot of people that grew up that everybody was catering to them and trying to make it easy for them. And so, therefore, everything they did was kind of easy.
Talked about that last time.
That was the discussion from last year.
Goes back to our
some of that.
Discussion last week talking about youth hunters and if we make it too easy for them. I think there's probably more and more hunters nowadays growing up that, you set them out in a box blind over a bean field and they shot a nice buck first day of youth season and did it in subsequent years, and now it might be a little more difficult for him.
This is just random. This probably won't work. What's your favorite thing to hunt? I mean, if I were to just knee-jerk reaction, what's your favorite thing to hunt? Michael, I'm going to say turkey for you already.
Ding, ding, ding. Correct.
Jeff?
Handgun deer.
Deer. Me, probably pheasant. Turkey's probably pretty close.
I could have answered that for you.
But, did you meet... immediate right out of the truck door success on those when you went hunting with the handgun the first time for deer, or if you guys went turkey hunting, deer hunting?
Absolutely not.
Not even close.
I think I went an entire year before I even got fast enough to get my shotgun up on a rooster pheasant because I learned what pheasants were and how to hunt them in magazines and books, and they move a whole bunch faster than they do in those pictures. I didn't have the ability to watch videos. I remember hearing my first rooster get up and just like, holy smokes, what is that? It sounds like machine gun fire. Well, that's a pheasant. That's what we're after, Aaron. So it was kind of shocking. You were kind of quiet there, so you must have had immediate success.
I shot a deer my first time out hunting, actually, so I think.
But
I've since then.
This
is why he's leaving us.
I think that comes back to again.
Bunch of losers.
Comes back to the podcast we did last week on, well, one, the pot where we hunt is pretty dense with deer, and then two, I think we were kind of set up for success. So we've had plenty of years of failure, I guess, or whatever you want to call failure, but not shooting a deer. So,
So 75% of us didn't go out and successful that first go around or first season, perhaps even. So that's, I guess that matches.
My first time pheasant hunting, I was not successful. So.
Now, you guys remember your first deer? You remember your first deer?
Yeah.
You guys remember your first deer,
yep.
Right? All right. And yours was, first day you went out hunting, I suppose. And,
but it only had 3/4 because it had been hit by a car. So maybe that's what
before or after you shot it?
Before.
Not only was it made easier, the deer was crippled, so it couldn't even run from it.
Well, I'm just saying, you remember your first deer, right? I vividly remember my first deer. But what I can remember even more so is all those hunts that led up to that first deer. And I remember who I was with. I remember what I shot it with. I remember the scene. I can see the deer standing there in the shatter cane with does. And I remember just after I made the shot, I remember opening up the bolt on my rifle, and I turned around to my cousin. And I whipped my hands in the air and said, "Yeah!" And I was just so pumped because after a couple of years of chasing these critters and never even seen a buck. You know, I couldn't believe it. I was just so pumped. It was a big deal.
So maybe right there kind of shows that a little struggle doesn't hurt and makes you appreciate a little bit more. Because you know, there's no doubt here in Nebraska, and we're probably not too different from some other states around our region, whatever you want to call it. You know, we've been in kind of a reduction of the deer herd mode, right? Yeah. So we've even been telling folks, you know, we've been doing this. We're going to, because of complaints, damage, and what have you, and just needed to make some correction because the deer herd there for a while was just, I won't say out of control, but it was higher than what a lot of the folks here in Nebraska really wanted. Whether they hunted deer or not is irrelevant. And yet I don't think we ever, as a hunter, we never take that into consideration. Yeah. I think when we go to the field, we have the same expectations, whether or not it's super high. We're hearing from the Game and Parks, the DNR, whoever it is, super high deer herd or super low. Yeah. We go to the field on opening morning with the same expectation.
I don't want to hear about drought. I don't want to hear about management goals. I want to see deer. And I want, that's, I think a lot of hunters, we kind of think like that at times. And then, but if you ask hunters on a survey, they understand it's management. Yep. The only reason we're hunting is because wildlife management, and most hunters get that and are proud of that. And my hat's off, tip the hat to them for that. But when you're out there in the field that morning, you I think that changes a little bit for some people. Like, I don't want to hear about that. I didn't see any deer.
Yep.
You know, well, we did reduce the herd 2 years ago. I didn't see any deer. You know, well, that's, so I think we always have to be, but I do think that, if you don't get it, it takes you a couple of years. It makes you appreciate what you have. And so there's that element. I mean, if you eat ribeye every night, you would look forward to a bologna sandwich, right? I mean, that's kind of the way, deer hunting can be.
Well, and we talked about in the last podcast when we were kind of going through have we made it too easy for kids, how you define success can be a big part of it. If that, you're only going out to harvest a whatever, fill in the blank, hunting might not be your thing. But if you like everything else that's going into it, the challenge of whether or not you're successful, just being out there watching the sunrise, sunset, seeing all those other critters, there's some folks that we all probably know that have grown appreciation for plants and songbirds and all sorts of stuff just because of they're taking it all in. I've had 2 unsuccessful sits for deer with the muzzleloader recently, and I wouldn't trade either one of those. Those were just both fun times to be out and doing. And we talked about one with the skunk. I guess I had one sneak up behind me and bust me. But other than that, I haven't hardly seen a deer. We got to switch gears here, folks, to something completely different. And Jeff, if I remember right, our good buddy Charlie Brogan, who produces our weekly show Outdoor Nebraska that's heard on radio stations across the state, kind of turned us on to this.
This is interesting.
This one comes out of Newsweek by Jess Thompson about a week ago, according to this here. And the headline's an attention grabber, folks. And there's a couple of different things I want to discuss on this, but I'm just going to read this headline. U.S. government wants 500,000 owls to be shot.
Barred owls.
Shot, and I guess I better read this word for word. 500,000 owls to be shot dead in cull. So this is quite the article, and Jeff, you're exactly right. Our beloved barred owl, the bringer of spring turkey gobbles, they're looking to cull 500,000 owls over the next 30 years, which if you just divide it by 30, that's over 16,000 owls a year. Mm-hmm. Actually, down in the article, it talks about how many they want to do first, and then how many they want to do the next year, and then how they want to bring that up. And this is pretty specific now. Barred owls have been in the Pacific Northwest since the 1950s, and now they outnumber the northern spotted owl across Washington, Oregon, and California. The spotted owl, Jeff, I remember conversations about that, a decade or two ago?
It was case studies in wildlife biology. I mean, it was
old growth timber, yep. And right now the article talks about the spotted owl. I'm going to get these 2 owls mixed up, Michael, so make sure I get the right one. The spotted owl is listed as threatened. I thought at one time, Jeff, that was endangered, but I must have been misremembering that from years ago. In areas where barred owls are present in higher numbers, northern spotted owl populations are declining rapidly. Now, in areas where they've been done some control of the barred owl, they see a decline of the spotted owl at a rate of about 0.2% per year, which seems like a loss to begin with, but they say that's about normal for a viable population. But where they don't control barred owls and where there's plenty of them, the rate of decrease is 12.1%, which is a pretty big jump. So the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is suggesting in those areas that we harvest 500,000 harvest. That's probably not even the right word. We're going to call them. We're going to shoot them. 500,000 barred owls. We'll get into this a little bit more. First thoughts. When you read that article, shooting owls.
It'd be tough to do.
That's not something that's high on my priority list.
It's going to be tough to do, especially guys and gals that have been out hunting for a few years. And it's ingrained in them that the owls are something we protect and defend, and we make sure we don't hurt the owl. And now to go out and do that, I think it's going to be tough for some.
Yeah. Tough from the perspective of it's
just
difficult to hunt owls,
no. I mean, hunters will know how to do that.
Just seems immoral.
Yeah, it's just going to be. It's like if you go up South Dakota and you can hunt the road. Boy, that first bird on the road ditch is a tough one to shoot, right? Because you can't do that in Nebraska, and of course, again, folks, we're talking the Northwest. We're not talking any place else in the country but the Pacific Northwest. But I think a lot of hunters and outdoors people, they're conservationists at heart. I mean, every study shows that. And so I think they're going to have that little bit of trepidation, like, are you sure about this, Fish and Wildlife Service? These are owls.
Well, and we've all been kind of taught, if you shoot it, you're going to eat it. I don't know that we're looking to find some owl fricassee recipes or baked owl or anything along those lines. I don't know what they taste like, folks. But there's also that thing. You guys have been pheasant hunting, and then the first time you go on a controlled shooting area where it's a shooting preserve and both roosters and hens are legal targets. That first hen that pops up in front of you, your whole thought is hen.
Don't shoot.
And then all of a sudden you realize, that's right, it's here.
Hardly,
But it's still a weird feeling. I've only been on a controlled shooting area where I'm the hunter a few times, and it does take a little bit of wait, just like you said, Jeff, like that pause, that little hiccup in is that legal or not, which is really interesting. Now, and we'll have to get Joel Jorgensen, our non-game, maybe they're going to have to switch his role now, non-game bird program manager, in here to talk a little bit about this. But I thought that in some areas within the Midwest, barred owls were being bullied by the bigger great horned owl. In some of the areas where habitat was being fragmented, and I've always seen barred owls a little bit deeper timber bird or liking more timber where that great horned owl can make a living right on the edge and hunt the grasslands. Not that the barred can't, it just didn't prefer to. And so we were losing ground with the barred owl because of the great horned owl. Yeah. We'll have to have him talk about that. So that's in the back of my mind as well. It's like, man, that's a bird here. Not only do we protect, but it's also kind of it's getting beaten on, and that's nature, folks. When they find a new niche, they find a new area to take advantage of, they do it. Survival of the fittest.
Go ahead.
My first thought is feel for the PR person that has to deal with this at the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service.
Don't shoot the messenger, right? Yeah.
I applaud they've done studies, they've done their research. This has obviously been aware for a long time. I think a lot of thought has gone into this, but I applaud the Fish and Wildlife Service for turning to. I'm assuming it will be hunters that will be tasked with this wildlife management right there with you. Of them. So I think the biggest sell is going to be probably to the non-hunting public on the why, how this impacts the spotted owl and how it'll benefit the spotted owl, along with the other measures it has in there on increasing habitat for the spotted owl. And there's other steps. Could not agree more. But yeah, anytime you change course this hard and sharp, there's going to be outcry.
It's a hard and sharp change
even for
course.
The people that are no hunters. They're assisting with wildlife management with fish and wildlife agencies every single year. But when they hear something like that, they're going to turn their head a little bit.
This is a perfect example of this is our model at work, right? Our model is a model of conservation by which hunters harvest game, harvest wildlife. You call it game, we make them game by laws and rules, but harvest animals for the betterment of the population and certainly for the betterment of society, right? And we've seen too many circumstances when that doesn't happen correctly, that society doesn't benefit from it, and wildlife don't benefit. So certainly hunting is huge benefit to wildlife and to society. And if people are listening to this podcast, going, "What does he mean? It's a benefit to wildlife? They're killing." Then you haven't been listening, right? And so certainly it's a huge benefit. And so this is a perfect example of, we have a wildlife issue, and we're going to use hunters to solve the issue once again. So absolutely, Hunter. Absolutely, hats off to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for that being their go-to to help solve the issue. Now, there's going to be hiccups and problems. There's going to be issues. And my biggest fear isn't finding people that are willing to harvest owls. My biggest fear is it's just going to take an education campaign, right? And it's going to be really important for hunters to be able to distinguish between barred owls and other non-target species. And so I think that's going to be one of many challenges. But every time you introduce a new, whether it be a hunting season or a new harvest regime for emergency conservation action or what have you, there's going to be a learning curve.
This one is going to be, and I'm going to toss out a couple other potential issues. According to the article, plan details that landowners or land managers could apply for a permit to kill the owls in the large. Well, I'll save the next part about what method they suggest you use. But this is one that I fear there could be some lumps for the hunters that want to help out or the individuals that do, as well as the whole process. Because I do think you kind of have to be careful. This is a critter that, it's not a goose. It's not a deer. It's not something that normally gets hunted. So you're going to have some people that just are vehemently opposed to that idea of adding one more. Heard it in other states that were trying to get a dove season. You guys have enough to shoot already. Why do you need one more species? As well as this one here, not only is it a critter that doesn't usually get hunted, but now it's kind of that, all right, you guys just out there for the kill. Because I can't imagine there's going to be a lot of owl recipes. I don't know how you're going to use the owl. You're not going to skin them out. And I will say, to the author's credit here, they don't say anything about hunters. They talk about culling, so it might be a true depredation style shoot or something along those lines. But it's also a critter that we don't hunt a lot of nocturnal birds, be quite honest with you. And when owls are the most active, and I assume they're going to have to figure out what the best way is to get people near them to cull them. I'll use their terminology. During the day, because if you Google, like we did, Google spotted owl and barred owl.
Boy, you can't hardly tell on the wing what there's
tough.
So little.
You got to talk to them.
It's tough. So this will really be interesting to see where this goes. This has not been approved yet. It's just in the their plan, and then they're taking comments on it now, I do believe is what it says. But it is interesting to see. This is kind of where they're going, but this probably is, I don't know if I'd say it's going to become more common, but it's definitely, as we see more, North American native species invading new areas within that realm. Look at Nebraska, white-tailed deer, mule deer. We're definitely trying to get mule deer a little bit of an edge in areas that they historically have been more prominent, where whitetails have moved in. And that's kind of the case here. It just happens to be two birds that we've never really thought of as game birds.
Yeah. So it'll be tough.
It's really, this will be interesting to watch. I'm sure this is going to be a pretty divisive issue in the years to come. Now, I don't think it's coming to Nebraska, folks. That would be my guess. Guess. So we've got our own issues to deal with some species we're trying to figure out invasive or not. Bullfrogs jump to mind, Jeff, and I can tell you one thing.
It might be a good time to be in the owl hooter business.
Well, you can just see, Primos will come out with a, woo, 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 who cooks for you or whatever call, and then there'll be some decoys. I mean, it'd be a decoy business. But you're talking 30 years. It's plenty of time for an industry to pop up and then phase out. I mean, that's a long time, right? They're talking 30 years.
Well, as long as they can be phased out too, because all of a sudden it's hard to take something away like that. Boy, I'm a diehard. My grandpa taught me how to owl hunt.
Look at the spring snow goose season. Right?
Goose.
I mean, there's no season in spring. That's a conservation order to reduce snow goose. And there's a lot of people who don't agree with that. But we do agree that the snow goose is having a huge impact on the Arctic tundra. So, you look at that and say, if the owl's having an impact on the spotted owl, the native spotted owl, that's a problem. And that's what hunting's for, right? To help with those problems.
Yeah, it's never what us hunters don't usually give that as a cause or reason we hunt all the time. We've heard of it, and sometimes we'll mark it on the survey, but it's usually some other things that bring it in.
Yep. It's not usually top of the list.
Yeah. Somebody brought it up. I didn't, but it's an interesting idea that if you are then calling owls and able to shoot owls, will you be able to hold on to barred owl parts? Because right now it's not only against state law, it's against federal law to possess owl feathers, body parts, eggs, parts of the nest, whatever. Highly illegal. Does this... what do you got to do? Are they going to be, somebody that wants an owl mount? Is this now open the door?
Are they going to be? It probably depends on what action the Fish and Wildlife. I mean, obviously it's still in the plan phase and public comment, and it could potentially not even happen or be a long time before it does. But you wonder if they have to reclassify them as a game bird or do some sort of conservation order or whatever. But yeah, maybe I would see it as you have to turn in any carcasses to the Fish and Wildlife Service would be my thought, but there's probably biologists that know those processes.
And you got to take that into account too. What are hunters willing to do to help us with this wildlife issue, right? Yeah, are they willing to go through the trouble of, okay, if I shoot an owl, then I got to take the carcass, I got to go to a DNR, and that's extra effort that, a lot of people may not. So the rules will be in, the regulations on this will be interesting.
And you guys, all four of us, I'm going to put us in this because I got to assume Missouri and Wisconsin had those old-timey bars where they had a bunch of mounts and the different things were probably grandfathered in, some birds and critters that you couldn't now possess, but they've been there so long. They're all turned almost as yellow as some of the paint in our hallways because some of those were smoking establishments for decades. But, there is probably that kind of appeal that, boy, if I could mount one of these.
Sure. There'd be a lot of people.
Now there'd be some folks, I'm going to go shoot a few and I'm going to get a pair of them or something along those lines. But if you can't, like you said, that's just, there's not many things I think I'd go hunt if I had to turn it in right away. I don't know what it is. Yeah. They're just that idea of, that's kind of, I don't know.
Hunters are not out there just for the sake of killing. So right off the bat, you've got to make sure that it's palatable to hunters, or they just won't do it, right? Yep. And it's not recreational target shooters that are going to go out and shoot a bunch of owls. I mean, it's going to be likely, I would assume, hunters who are going to answer the call. But the reality of it is, you have to make it palatable. And to a lot of hunters, it won't be just because we were born and raised that you don't shoot owls. And so right away, there'll be those that I'm not shooting owls. Just like we've talked about bear hunting. There's a lot of people who don't have a desire to go bear hunting. Not that they're against bear hunting. They just personal ethics, don't have a desire to go shoot a bear. Maybe that may be up to them. Owls are probably going to be that on times 10 for some people, and then however easy it is, if you harvest, like I said, you got to turn it in or all this kind. That's okay. I just may not participate in that, but so it's got to be palatable. We'll see what happens. The rules will be coming. The regulations will be coming, and then we kind of
might be interesting to see if this goes through, like you said, Hunter. But just back of the mind, I'm not sure where I sit on this completely yet, but just the process, I'd love to see it go through and just see how they implement it and stuff. Like it said, talking about landowners and land managers. I'll finish that. A large bore shotgun would be the choice weapon. I'm trying to think, what gauge would you use for an owl?
12 gauge.
12 gauge?
They're like, barred owl, probably, I'll Google this as we're sitting here. I bet a big barred owl is maybe 3 pounds. So you're talking, about the size of a pheasant. And that might, nope, here we go. An adult can range from 1 to 2.5 pounds. Well, I wasn't too far off. So I mean, you're talking a lot of feathers on an owl, and not much bone, not much meat, and that type of stuff. 12 gauge would do it. There's no doubt about it. But I really think this is a sub gauge bird.
Well,
I really do.
If you want to mount it, I would say absolutely. Now you're talking 28s, right?
I think how far of a shot is it going to be? You're going to be shooting them.
That's another thing to consider. Yeah,
shooting them out of trees and
how close can you
I know
get
nothing
to
about owl hunting, so I'm
That's
not the guy.
I think there's some learning curves and
There's gonna
challenges.
be 30 years. There's
going to
be some learning curves.
Dusk
right?
and dawn only. Probably.
I think you need.
Another thing is, if you've ever went on YouTube and looked up videos or just stumbled upon videos of owls in flight, you can't even hear them.
No,
So if you're
yeah.
going out when it's dark and you're trying to hear them to look for, you're not even going to have a clue.
Now, once again, folks, we're talking Pacific Northwest. That's the only discussion on the table.
I'm
Do not do this in
Washington,
Nebraska.
California.
I think it's going to be potted out of the pine trees while they're sitting there during the day. But barred owls, the ones we've been around here in the Midwest and the Great Plains, they don't let you walk up to them like some other owls. They're like you said, they're all of a sudden this thing's in flight, you can't even hear it, and off it goes. And you've got to be able to tell if that is a 1 to 2.5 pound barred owl, or if it's the slightly smaller spotted owl. See, I knew I was going to do that.
You cut yourself.
It will be a critter. From what little I know, it'll be a critter of opportunity is what I'm seeing.
It just has to happen at a pretty
Well,
high rate in some
yeah,
areas.
You're just
That's
out and about on a squirrel hunt or something. Oh, hey, there's a barred owl.
Now, somewhere there's somebody.
Use my large bore shotgun.
Took my 12 gauge squirrel hunt.
Somewhere there's somebody that's like an owl, barred owl expert. That, oh no, gosh, there's really, you can call them in between 1 and 2. I don't know, but
It's a new.
I'm telling you, owl hooter.
Yeah, oh yeah, you know what? That's an excellent point. We've been there. We've all called owls before, right? I used to lead hikes at night calling in owls, including especially the barred owl. And then you can use a light underneath. By the way, for those that are playing the game at home, spotted owls weigh about a pound to 1.5 pounds. So they're on that small side for the barred owl, but not completely out of that range. But mostly feathers. That's the problem with a lot of these owls. Is just that they're kind of feathery. So yeah, interesting. It'll be fun to watch that one. It really will.
We've educated kids for so many years now, 50, 60 years on owls, 70 years on owls and how cool they are and how majestic they are and respect the owls and all that. Like I said, you're talking generations that have grown up just, learning and respecting, they're going to have a hard time. Not that you have to disrespect an animal to hunt it, but they've had such a high respect for this animal.
Level, a different type of respect.
Yeah, you got to, brought up that you have to nurture this animal. You have to protect this animal at all costs. And so, it's just going to be tough.
I do wonder, and we're going to have to put a bow in here real quick, is like you said, this is not Nebraska, folks. This is a very specific area if it were even to move forward. But it kind of opens the door. Well, we need more whatever, because owls are very generalist when it comes to eating and very successful at that. And it doesn't take much, coffee shop biology to say, well, they're shooting them over here to help something. Why aren't we shooting them over here to help this completely other thing? So it'll be interesting. It kind of opens the door on something new and different, but it definitely is a headliner when they say they need 500,000 of them shot. So, all right, folks, you got questions, you got comments about anything we talked about today, make sure you comment down below. If we're not back in here before the holidays and Christmas, we hope you have the merriest of holidays. Enjoy that. Not only time with friends and family, but make sure you get outside to do it. But until next time,
Hunt Nebraska, brought to you by your Nebraska Game and Parks Commission.